Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffet as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas, sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffet.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffet. I'm in Burrawang, New South Wales, as you know, where it is 9:39 in the morning, Friday morning, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome a good friend of mine to the studio, Jay Malik, who's in Fort Lauderdale in Florida. Jay, welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Great to see you.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to see you after many, many years.
Yeah, it's been a while. Now, we met, I think, around 2014. We used to attend conferences. You were building your business. You're an accountant, and you deal exclusively with US-based dentists. That's a very good niche. And it was, in fact, at a marketing conference where we learned that the riches were in niches or niches. Riches were in niches, as he used to say, in terms of focusing, not trying to be everything to everybody, but focusing on one market pretty well. I thought that it'd be great to talk to you. I know that my podcast goes primarily to dentists, but they are all over the world. But the principles of good business are universal. You know, people will make the same stupid mistakes and they'll also make the same wise decisions. So I thought, who better to tell dentists about things that they've seen that have worked and things that they've seen that dentists have gone chasing squirrels and not worked than an accountant who deals with dentists. So, Jay, tell us about how you got into dealing only with dentists. And then I think probably what we'll start exploring is some of the things that you've seen over time in terms of, timing the market versus time in the market sort of philosophies. Over to you, Jay. How did you become an accountant for dentists?
Well, decades ago, when I started my practice, I was what they call hungry, starving accountant. And I would take any client, anybody who could pay my fee and who had a pulse. That was my criteria. And so they could become a client. Then after some time, I noticed that I was able to help the most with the doctors of all kinds. So I said, this is a good area. I should focus on doctors. So I started serving doctors only. Again, the formula was the same. As long as you were a doctor, you could pay my fee, you can become a client. So as the practice grew and we became established, I realized that there were differences between doctors. For example, I started noticing that the surgeons I had in my practice, they were kind of difficult to deal with. People call it God complex. I don't know. So I said, well, let's now carve them out. So I left the rest of the dentists with me, and it worked fine. So I had dentists, I had chiropractors, I had MDs, the medical doctors. And then Affordable Care Act came along in the US, which was also called Obamacare, about 15 years ago. And it was very clear when they passed that law that they wanted to support the big groups and big hospital systems. The individual doctor was on his way out. So I saw the writing on the wall. So I started focusing on doctors who were not MDs, not medical doctors, basically chiropractors and dentists. And then that became clear because now in the US, if you go around, it's very hard to have an individual small practice. You have to be a part of a big hospital group or one of these bigger different organizations. Anyway, and when they take over all of your practice, they don't need an independent accountant because they have their in-house accountants. So I lost them. So I went along with the chiropractors and dentists. Then slowly, somehow, chiropractors also, fell off, and I'm left with dentists.
Wow. So it's a process of attrition,
Yeah.
one you choosing, and then also chiropractors choosing, I guess, it's a different mindset with chiropractors. In fact, I had a really great chiropractor. I was a patient of a really great chiropractor, but he sadly went bankrupt because of
Uh-huh.
real estate deals that fell through. He was a really good
Yes.
chiropractor. He had a very nice practice, but the money and the time that he was putting into the real estate totally can be out of your control if somebody pulls a pin. My feeling is that in the building profession, it's not an accident. They target weak owners, and all of a sudden the weak owner has to sell for pennies, and some builder buys it, and then the builder makes the profit that was really meant for the previous owner. So it can be dangerous in diversification. I guess you've seen that too with dentists as well, where they've diversified into some other area, and it's taken their time. It's taken their mind off what they should be doing, the dentistry, because dentistry can be a very profitable business in its own. It's taken their mind off their family, and all of a sudden it's taken their house, it's taken their livelihood, everything gone. Tell me about don't mention any names, but some of the disasters you've seen that dentists have fallen in.
Yes. Well, in the US, as you know, dentistry is profitable, and it has been for quite a while. Actually, before the PPOs, the insurance companies came along, it was very profitable, and so much so that the dentists were financially better off than the medical doctors, MDs. And it was for about quite some time until about 7, 8, 10 years ago. The DSOs came in the market and they started buying the practices. And then some practices they bought at good price, as you know. And then along the way, the trend for the PPOs kept coming. So the profitability in the dental practices has declined over the years. And now, for example, I remember very well when we used to go to dental conferences. After the conference, we sit on the bar talking about numbers, and if somebody said that their overhead was above 50%, all other dentists said, "Oh man, this is too much. You need to do something about it. What's wrong with you?" Now 60 is considered normal. So, and the other thing what has happened is that the PPOs can keep making it difficult for the independent dentists to practice because they keep reducing the reimbursements. And then we have also more doctors coming into the market. They're more and unfortunately, in the US, they are coming with a lot of debt. The dental education has become very expensive. So it's normal to see now these days $600,000-700,000 on a fresh dental graduate in debt. So it's hard for them to buy a practice because they don't qualify for loans. And then also, then the big DSOs, they have to work there as an employee. So all these changes, have been happening in the profession. And these changes have resulted in a general atmosphere in the industry, dental industry, that dentistry is not as profitable as it was. And that is true to some extent. So we now run into dentists very often who want to do something else. They want to be passive in income and all that. And social media trends have also played a role in that. We have all these people who have become social media influencers. They keep telling the dentist, some of them are themselves former dentists. So they keep telling them that, you're not making much money, come invest with me and you will make more money. And so that has gone on. So there's this whole atmosphere has been developed that dentistry is not as profitable. So everybody's looking for something else, some other way to. Dentistry itself is still profitable, by the way, because I do numbers, I do books for all these dentists all over the country. And those who do their work well and treat it as a business, they're doing all right.
It's interesting you say that. I remember back when my children were born, I was looking at extra business outside of dentistry. And one of the people who I was doing business with was a greenkeeper at a golf club. And he was attracted to this business because there was a lot of doctors and dentists interested in it. But he said to me, he said, I don't know why you're doing this. He said, dentistry is very profitable. Why don't you just work harder at your business of dentistry and you'll make more money than what this business. He said, this business is good for rats and mice, people like employees, but for business owners, not so. And it was probably some really good advice, because I then stepped back from the second business, focused on my dental practice, and grew my dental practice exponentially by focusing on customer service and things that dentistry didn't deliver to patients. But I wanted to go back to something that you said right at the start of what you were talking about, and that figure of overhead being 50 or 60%. Because when I started owning a practice and looking for a practice in the mid 1980s, and then bought my practice at the start of 1987, that was the figure. You'd do your books. These were your expenses, and you would have a family trust that paid the expenses of the practice, so that you could pay the family trust a fee, a percentage fee for paying the bills, and then you could allocate through the family trust to your spouse, so that you could share income, because you couldn't have non-dentists owning dental practices. It had to be owned by a dentist back in those days. But that figure that you said, 50% overhead going to 60% overhead, was something that was said back then, which was kind of weird, because it didn't pay the owner of the practice for being a dentist. He came in, did the dentistry, he paid the rent, he paid the materials, he paid the staff, and then what was left over was considered his profit of the business, but there was no pay for him being the dentist and then the profit. So if he owned the practice and didn't do dentistry, who would do the dentistry? He'd have to employ another dentist. So really, you have to treat yourself in your practice as an employee of your practice, and then still show profit over that. And so that was a really weird figure. The other thing that they used to value practices back then, Jay, I don't know if they did it in the US, because now it's all valued on EBIT and EBITDA, but back then it was like so much to sell a practice, so much for goodwill. A percentage of the practice was goodwill, and then a percentage of a practice was equipment. And rusty old instruments and drills that didn't work were counted as equipment. Now they don't even look at the equipment. It's all just about profit, earnings before interest and taxation. And so it's interesting how times have changed. But dentistry in Australia was, the numbers when I sold my practice was that there was 20% profit in a practice after you'd paid all the dentists as well. And that's what attracted the corporations to buy dental practices and aggregate them, because there's a lot of wiggle room in that 20% when you compare to retail, where profits are luckily sometimes 5%. So that profit attracted the corporations. And so you're seeing that in the US with DSOs now taking the market. But what I also wanted to talk to you about with the DSOs, you talked about the loans that dental students graduate with, and then they want to buy a practice. And of course, they can't get a loan for the practice. So if they start a practice, they can't get a loan to set it up properly. And then, of course, if they look for a greenfield site, the DSOs are already onto that, and the DSOs will just pay more for the greenfield site. So they can't even get the good sites anymore. With Howard Ferran setting up opposite a mall or a supermarket, you just can't do that anymore. It's really tough. How's that affecting? That's really channeling all the graduates straight into employment with DSOs as opposed to their own practice.
Yes. You see, in the US, I guess similar situation in other countries as well, that the profit is in owning. You become rich by owning a business. By working for somebody, whether it's a DSO or whatever you call it, you're still an employee. And I don't know of any employer who will pay you all the money you make. Because then why do they have you? Why do they have the business? That is because they take a cut out of that. That is their thing, right? And unfortunately, dentists are not as financially savvy. Unfortunately, the kids normally attracted to science are somehow not good at money management. And in the US, we have another problem. Our high school level, they don't teach personal financing. So it's hard. And then they study science, and then they go into dental school, they come out. Dental school, nobody touches practice management and all that stuff. So they don't know. So when they come out, it is hard. Those who are curious and smart, they learn it on their own. and they do well. Those who don't, they unfortunately struggle financially.
Yeah, it was a real eye-opener when I started going to the US in 2007, because I joined a mastermind group there and that met every 3 months. And I thought, whatever they're doing in the US will work in Australia, because it's a bigger market, so it's better tested and it'll work in a smaller market. They're very similar in population and thought patterns, Australia and the US. Australia's just, the population of Texas right across Australia, land of the US. So we're spread out a lot. But or to put it even in the population of the greater New York, the 5 boroughs, I think, is the same population as Australia, about 26 million. So but spread out over a big chunk of places. But one of the things I learned there, especially going on to online forums before social media, was that there was a lot of dentists who didn't actually like being dentists, but they had their student debt, they had their practice debt, they had their family credit card debt. That's a polite way of saying that somebody in the house was spending a lot on essential items, and they were just going through the motions until they could finally get to retirement. And it scared me, because I thought, imagine being a patient of one of those dentists, with that chip on the shoulder that they have because of all this debt, and they're just trying to get through life and finally get out of dentistry. And I was talking to a dentist that you and I know very well, a former dentist and coach, David Maddow, and I said, that's a lot of people on this forum. He said, David, it's probably more than half the dentists out there don't want to be dentists. And I'm going, oh, that's a lot. That's a bad number for the general public to be saying, well, how do I know which dentist I'm going to? Does he want to be a dentist or not? Does he smile? So, and it's getting worse. As you said, it's getting worse because the DSOs are cornering the market, and the biggest DSO is owned by a dentist. That was his model. He just didn't want to be a dentist in his practice, so he just grew and grew and grew. It's tough. And yet some of the employee dentists, like you were talking, if they were good, they could run their own practice, but they're not. And the DSOs are having trouble getting the dentists to do dentistry in their patients that they would want in their own mouths. So they're actually doing cheap patches and plastic in their patients' mouths, yet they wouldn't tolerate that in their own mouth. And so if they could improve the quality of the dentistry that their employee dentists are doing, those dental practices would be more profitable for the DSOs. But also, it's the same in a small dental practice. If you employ dentists and they're just patching, then they're an unproductive practitioner, and that's scary. How does a dentist owning their own practice deal with an unproductive associate? I'm sure you have clients who have the principal dentist. The owner is up here; he's making a lot of money, and the others he's just renting space to them. He's almost curing homelessness sometimes with those underproducing dentists.
Yes. One thing is that, you see, in the US, there is a problem which is not talked about that much, but it is a big problem. There is insurance mentality in the general population. The medical insurance covers, and then you pay your small copay or deductible, and rest is all covered. So the patients expect the same model on the dental side as well. But the fact is, dental insurance doesn't work that way. The insurance companies quote the lowest price to the employer, who basically buys the insurance in most cases, and they cap the benefit, $1,000 a year or something like that. But the patients say, okay, do only what my insurance pays for. So that is a challenge with the dentist has, and it's basically educating the patient's part, which is hard because this is a culture. And then the other another aspect of that is that because of all these pressures the dentists have on themselves, their debt payments and all this stuff, the pressure to keep a certain lifestyle and all that stuff, which costs money. So dentists now are they try to push dentistry on people. So they are more keen to do dentistry in somebody's mouth than the patient is keen. So dentists used to be very trusted profession, and over the years it is not as trusted, because now people think they're like treated like car salesmen. They are like trying to sell them. So that's why when they suggest a treatment plan, people resist. And unfortunately, there are a lot of dental coaches who tell these shady techniques, teach to dentists to increase their production. And people are not stupid. Common person picks up right away. So that's another challenge the profession is having.
It's interesting down here. I don't know whether it's the same in the US, but the dental profession, because I was a dentist. For those watching who don't know, I was a dentist for 35 years, but I retired myself because of arthritis in my hands. I can't hold things anymore. I was having difficulty taking the golf ball out of the golf hole because my thumbs don't work. So 8 years since I've actually held a drill, but down here in that 8 years, dentists have been able to help their patients access their retirement funds, Ks I think they're called in the US, superannuation down here, for medical emergencies, for people to do something that they need for their health. The money is tied up in retirement funds to provide for their retirement when they stop working. And dentists have been saying, well, people need their teeth straightened, people need their rotten teeth taken out and have implants and all on 4s and all on X's. And the dental profession is falling into this trap that, dentistry is essential and these people need this to improve their quality of life. It's an interesting debate because on the one hand, there is, as you know, statistically, a lot of people don't reach retirement age anyway. And so why shouldn't they spend the money on something if they're going to die before the age of 65? But ethically, to me, it was wrong. I built my practice. Everybody paid out of their own pocket. Nobody was reliant on maximizing their insurance benefit, and certainly there was no dipping into superannuation or 401ks. But it does give that the profession a bad name. But you would know this, Jay, from all business. Whenever there's an intermediary between the provider of the product or service and the receiver of the product or service, be it a government, an insurance company, superannuation, retirement, there will always be somebody trying to work it on both ways. Because what we found when I was practicing, people who did say, I want to access my retirement fund for my teeth, and then they'd get the money, but they wouldn't spend it on their teeth. They'd spend it on gambling or booze that had caused them to be desperate for money anyway. So it's a tough argument, but the last thing that the dental profession wants is to lower its expectation. I think the important thing that dentists need to realize is that despite the fact that the public may perceive them to be less ethical, nobody still wants to be a dentist. If you say to someone, would you do what dentists do? Stick your hands into smelly mouths and breathe all that stuff all day? Oh, no, wouldn't want to do that. Or nobody wants to go to the dentist. Nobody wakes up on a Monday morning and says, I've got $500 in my wallet. I'm going down the dentist and see what I can buy. Nobody says that. It's a grudge buy. So it's a tough business to be in, but every dentist looks at in black and white scientifically at what's in somebody's mouth and says, well, they need this, they need this, they need this. But then sometimes they don't want to offend the patient by suggesting something that might upset them financially or make them uncomfortable about the decision financially, even though it's best for them. Tough decision. But what are you seeing in your clients?
Yes, we are here noticing because DSOs are backed by private equity firms.
Yes.
And that's where the money comes from. They basically are profit seeking. Whichever industry they have gone in the US or all over the world, they just take their profit, they go out and then whatever happens to the industry, it happens. That's not their problem. So many industries this way, what they used to be historically are not profitable. They can't run because now they have come in the dentistry, the same thing we are seeing happening. There are now DSOs which are in default on their loans which they bought because they consolidated the practices, and then in order the people who set up the DSOs pay them off the earlier investors, they got more loans from at the higher rates. So now they're too much debt over there. Now they can't be profitable. So many DSOs are in trouble. And the other thing is the service. The quality of service declines because it's profit motives become. By the way, the private equity, the general number accepted is to the investors in private equity, they give about 25% profit, basically return on the capital, right? Which is a lot of money because in the US for the last 100+ years, the return on equities, stocks, if you take the average of all this time, has been about 10%. So here they are private equity is promising 25% to its investors. So money got to come from somewhere. The dental practices used to be profitable, so that when they buy, they're not as profitable after all. After all these financial engineering, they call it, has been done. And here you are. So now actually we are seeing that only the best practices are being bought at present time by the DSOs. Marginal practice, they were in the beginning, they were buying even marginal practices. Now they are not, because all these problems they're having.
Yeah, it always amazed me when the DSO model came to Australia, the aggregation. They went after the very high producing, high profitable ones because that's where the cream was. But then with time, you run out of those. If they're already all sold, then the next DSO and the next one after that is left to pick on lower, leaner practices. As you would know, what happens when they acquire the practice, they want the owner to stay on to maintain the same profit so that the investors get some of their money back. But as soon as that time frame has expired for the owner to stay on and they're out, the practice diminishes quite significantly. And I'm hearing stories down here from friends of mine who sold to a corporate, as they're called down here, and then were relocated out of their own practice. And their own practice then fell because the original owners had gone, and now that practice is being rewarded for hitting rock bottom and trying to recover. Once you hit bedrock, it's very hard to keep going through bedrock. They're saying, "Well, look at this one. They've arrested the decay in their numbers," and it's quite funny what they're celebrating. But as time goes by, the money taken at the top, and we see it in all corporations. The golden handshakes for the managing directors and CEOs who really do nothing except just shuffle paper, and they take long-term earnings after they've ripped the guts out of a significant business. And we're seeing that you're saying that that's what's happening in the dental profession with the corporations and the DSO.
Oh, yes. Because some dentists got into it early. They have done well for themselves, but it is like a Ponzi scheme. Those who have made some money, they are like now traveling in luxury and on the social media showing all their travels and their branded clothes and branded bags and sometimes even private jet flights and all that, right? So the idea is to attract more dentists to sell to the DSO. That this is the lifestyle you can live. But they've done well. But the new people who are selling now, because what happens is when you sell to, they don't give all your money right away. You invest back some part of it, 30, 40, 50, whatever you agree with, percent, you live with them, because that is then supposedly supposed to grow and make you rich and famous later. That part the dentists are having a hard time getting. Because there is no money. So it's an interesting time we are living through.
So let's get back to the privately, the private practice that's still owned by a dentist or a couple of dentists. One of the things that I was discussing with a colleague of mine is the single location practice versus maybe owning a practice here and a practice over there and then a third practice in somewhere else. Is it profitable to own multiple practices as dentists, or is it better to just grow one site and make it more profitable in itself? What do you see with your clients?
It actually is a function of geography, where you are. If you are in a rural area where the distances are a lot and it's hard for people to travel, then having practices in different population centers, multiple, it is more profitable. In suburban environments, whatever urban environments, now the trend appears to be having one practice and there are multiple specialities in there as well. Doing everything in-house in one big umbrella, that appears to be more profitable.
Yes, in fact, that's how I ran my own office. Had an endodontist come in, had someone who with a practice limited to oral surgery came in and took out wisdom teeth and took out broken root-filled teeth, things that took time and were unpredictable. This person was very predictable. And also he put implants in for me as well. So patients knew they were coming to our rooms and they didn't have to go and find a specialist, or locate a specialist that we were sending them to. And they got to deal with our team as well. So that worked very well for us. But in the back of my head, as you said that, I have met and spoken to dentists who have practices in different rural towns, and they'll drill teeth in one town and then drive 200 miles in the evening and then drill teeth in the next town, then drive 200 miles and do a 5-day loop. Once a month, they'll do 5 towns to be seen in those practices. And I guess they're hoping, as the key person, that they get a lot of the business on those times they're in their own practice. But at the other times, they've just got somebody just manning the chair and doing the bits and pieces work and steering them back to the owner. It's a tough decision like that. And as you know, with your clients, anybody who gets a really good assistant dentist, the risk is that dentist will leave and set up as their competition. So how do you keep them to stay on?
Yes. Yeah, it is challenging. And here, even today, it's hard to find good associates. Because those who are good and have some business sense, they set up their own. So what they are doing, some smart doctors are doing, is they are actually starting those dentists as partners. And they're selling part of the practice to them. If somebody is doing well, they can produce well. Well, it's better to sell them some equity so they get a part of their. Here it's about the associate dentist. Generally, it's around 35% of collections they get of whatever they collect, or whatever they produce, whatever is collected of that. 35% generally, up to that number for non-specialists. Specialists are higher. Sometimes they go up to 50%. So those doctors, what they do is they get the associate. Okay, you're going to keep getting your 35%. Plus, on top of that, you get an equity. You have to buy the equity from the owning doctor, but you can buy 5%, 10%, 15% in the practice. So now you are getting a piece of that as well, the overall profit, which you will get if you go outside and set up your own. You will be saved the effort of setting up the practice, managing the employees, all this headache you will be saved because the practice is already there and it's running well. So that is used.
I did speak to an American businessman who, in the state that he lived, he was allowed to buy a dental practice, and he partnered with a young dentist, and that practice grew very successfully, just focusing on doing the simple things well in the practice. And then they partnered again with another dentist as well, who was very similar to the first dentist. So he had two dentists as partners, plus him as a non-dentist owner. And I said to him, that's a 1 in 20 to find one dentist who's that smart. And then it's a 1 in 400 to find two dentists that smart. I said, you've hit 2 home runs there. And then he also had an opportunity to, at some time, have an exit strategy. And he exercised that as well by selling to these two dentists. He helped set them up. I guess he grandfathered them into a practice ownership, and then he grandfathered himself out of the office. And that, I think, was very successful story, and one that can be replicated, but it's about choosing your partner as well. I guess it's like choosing a spouse as well. It can be very dangerous sometimes if you get the wrong spouse. That can also be a very expensive business decision if you get the wrong spouse.
Yeah. And dentists, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, that's fine.
The dentists are known to go through divorce rate is very high among dentists, as you know, in the US at least. We have the highest divorce rate among all medical related professionals in the dentists. Okay. It's about really high. So dentists are not good at that in that area as well, it looks like.
If you talk to our friend David Harris, who investigates dental practice fraud, he says the number one thief in a dental practice is the spouse of the dentist, who's seeing how much money the practice is making and learns how to skim some off before they depart from the relationship. And it's often they do it quite successfully without suffering the wrath of the law. They've gotten out and they've taken the profit, and then they've taken the rest of the assets in the marriage dissolution as well. That's a whole other topic, Jay.
Yeah.
I think the best advice I can give to any dentist on financial advice is one marriage only is much better than 2 or 3 or 4. There's not much left once you get down to that end of those numbers. And it usually seems to be the same mistake made again and again and again in those sort of situations. But one of the things that does cause a divorce in dentistry is that chasing the dream, or the lack of, work-life balance and not having the right partner who appreciates the time at the practice and having the roles clearly defined, I think, in terms of who does what in the house and who does what with the income. But yeah, there's always good stories, but there's always bad stories as well we hear with marriages, sadly.
Yes, yes, unfortunately, that is the case. Well, you see, I also feel there is every year in my practice, I am dealing with one divorce. Some dentists getting divorced. Almost every year there is one. And so I have a lot of experience, unfortunately, in this area. And what I've noticed is that one major reason is that the stress of running the practice or the financial stress. I don't know in Australia, but here in US, there is another problem that the lifestyle expectation of dentists is very high. They are expected to live a very high lifestyle. So that costs a lot of money. So that increases the stress on the relationship.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah, that the expense of travel, the expense of traveling too much, the expense of having luxury cars. Buying a new car and driving it out of a showroom is the worst financial decision you can make. Third of the value goes as soon as those Michelins hit the street.
Yes.
As soon as they hit the street, 1/3 value gone in one instant. A
Yes.
year later, I know. And because I used to buy a new car every 3 years, but my current car I bought 18 years ago, and it still goes fine. And getting it serviced every year is a lot less expensive than buying another one. So why not have an old car?
We also have a cultural issue in America. Americans are more into cars, as you know. So we have the automobile industry has done a very good job of keeping Americans poor by creating this culture of car.
Well, true. And I remember my dad worked for he was a salesman. He worked after he left the Air Force when I was 3 or 4. He had 3 sales jobs, and he got a new car every year as part of his sales job. And so that's just the automobile industry, and also the tax deductibility of motor vehicles for companies to provide that as a luxury. Then that started getting taxed in Australia. I don't know if it gets taxed in the US. I think it's called a fringe benefit tax for the company has to pay a tax for providing these things in lieu of wages. It's kind of like, well, you're paying them luxury car, you're giving them a luxury car to get around. Otherwise, they'd have to drive their own car. And so the companies, they'll tax everything down here. The only thing they don't tax is the family home down here, which is different. I know in the US, the capital gain on family homes is taxed, but down here it's still untaxed. It's the last thing that they haven't taxed. And they stopped taxing death down here. We don't have death taxes down here yet. So
yeah, our death tax has gone up significantly. The threshold for that homes, a family home, we actually, if you have lived in the same home for the 2 of the last 5 years, then you can, when you sell it, $500,000 you can keep without paying the capital gains tax.
$500,000. How's that go for the value of a house? That wouldn't be like that. An apartment in Manhattan is going to cost you multiple $500,000.
Yeah. It depends on the area you are in. If you are in an area where, generally, I'm also seeing that dentists, they like to live in nicer areas, in expensive homes. So we see $1 million home, dentists live in a $1 million home, quite normal.
I think one of the things that I know that I did, and I'm assuming a lot of dentists in the US, is that if you earn a lot of money, one of the things that I wanted to do was make sure that my children had the best possible education. And so send them to the best schools, which cost more. And so it's like the 2 happiest days when you own a yacht. The day you buy it and the day you sell it. The day that you pay that last lot of school tuition fees is also a very happy day.
Yes.
But then some parents get caught up with college fees and university fees and even university debts. I never had to pay a debt on my education, but by the time I married my wife, I paid her government debt on her education, and then my son as well. But that they were small compared to the high school fees, which were significant for my son. Well worth it. He's benefited from that education and that focus on education as well. But I think that's important. But as for, spending stuff, I once played golf with a restaurant owner, actually a function center owner, and he was very adamant that 24 hours after the food's eaten, it all ends up in the same place, whether it's a high-end meal or a low-end meal. And he didn't put it as politely as that. And it's true. Sometimes we don't need to be eating the high-end stuff because we can get just as good a nutrition from buying our stuff and cooking it at home.
Yes.
Interesting. That's, again, one of the traps of success or traps of financial success is that we tend to spend. And I think that goes back to what we were discussing beforehand, that 95, as Omar Reed said, 95% of dentists being the age of 65 haven't been able to replace their dental income with assets that provide passive income, and so they have to keep working. And that's because they're along the way, as they're making the money, they're spending more. They're buying more fancy cars, they're buying more fancy clothes, more branded stuff, more watches that they don't need. You don't need a watch. The time's on your phone better than on your watch. It's funny, those decisions that some people make. Jay, we could talk forever about the mistakes that dentists make, and also I think we've done a broad brush stroke about the dental market in the US and the things that are affecting dental practice. It's the same. I feel that your role as the accountant is to help the dentist stay focused on wealth creation and not allow them to be distracted and end up chained to their drill at age 65. I think that's a universal, be it North America, Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom. It's the same everywhere, the distractions. Just before we go, do you find that dentists, because of their focus and, as you've mentioned, on business education to start off with, that they are actually a target for shady sales practices? People tend to target them, buy this get-rich-quick scheme or buy these fancy things that will make you look better to your friends. You find that they're targeted?
I believe that. I believe that. It is actually the whole dentists were, because they're every higher income profession, dentists are higher income profession. I mean, in the US, the median income for a family is these days about $75,000. And every dentist working makes 3 times that, even starting with at that level. So they are targets. But I will make it a little broader statement. I think social media, the explosive growth in social media and the influencer culture has made this aspect more difficult. The more for common people to protect themselves from shady characters. You see this whole, all the Instagram life is not somebody's real life. They're projecting all that because they want to get something from you. They have to sell something on the back end. That's why they are, all this high-end, expensive lifestyle they're projecting every day. And nobody's every day is like that. But they're doing it. People are not, common person doesn't understand that is the goal behind it. So they want their more views, so they can get paid by the social media companies. Social media companies have to run the ads to generate that income. So the more followers they have, the more outrageous thing they say or do, the more followers they will get. So this is, it's becoming, I don't know what the solution is, but I'm noticing it a lot.
It's a worry. It's a worry. It's I guess whether it's social media now or whether it was the invention of the wireless radio or the telephone or the newspaper, all these things have created dilemmas for the fabric of society at the time. And I suppose the good thing is that the society has come out from the invention of these things in a reasonable shape, but social media is a dramatic loud noise and a big distraction for a lot of people, sadly. You only have to go to a concert now and you can't even see the stage because everybody's videoing with their phone and you're just seeing reflections of screens. In the old days, you remember at a concert, if you used just a regular camera, they would take your camera off you. You weren't allowed to take photographs. Now you can record, and of course that's marketing for the entertainer. So the entertainer actually wants more of that. because
Yes.
that's sometimes these number one songs and albums are number one because of the social media influence rather than the quality of the entertainment. It's a tough
Yes.
dilemma. We're getting way off the track of dentistry
Yes.
now, but getting very philosophical. Jay, we've come to the end of our time. If any dentist out there is looking for a good accountant in the United States where you specialise in helping dentists with their accounting, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, I have my website available, lesstaxfordentists.com. That is the name of the website. And I have my own website as well, jaymalik.com, my name. And over there are links. You can send an email to from there. My phone number is there. Anybody can approach me. And for the US dentists, I always offer them, if anybody thinks to figure out how much they're overpaying in tax. By the way, 95% of the US dentists overpay in tax. They pay more tax than they have to. So if anybody wants to figure that out, they can send me their tax return. I'll analyze it for them for free and tell them where they could have saved the money in tax.
Wow. That's a good offer. Any dentists in the US out there, you should take Jay up on this offer straight away. That's good because not many people will give you that advice for free. And if he does give you that advice, please don't take it back to your accountant and say, look, you're making me pay more tax. I think you should switch to Jay because he's the one who's showing you where your accountant is actually failing you. And that's the important thing to look at. Jay Malik, thank you very much for being a guest today on the Ultimate Dental Podcast. It's been great catching up with you. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. It has been fun talking to you after a long time. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and keep on tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.